Good evening, and thank you, everyone, and welcome to the Orange County Clerk of Courts Clerks Against Domestic Violence Workshop webinar. I'm Dane Weister, the Communications and Public Affairs Director here at the Orange County Clerk of Courts, and we hope you can find tonight this information that we provide very useful. You'll be able to submit any questions you might have throughout our presentations through our Q&A function that you see on your screen. Bottom of your screen, all you need to do is type them in. Just type in your question and we will address them immediately after each speaker's presentation. So we hope to do that as we go along for this webinar. At the end of the workshop, a survey will also be available for you to provide feedback, and that helps us to create new content for the future and try to share the kind of information you and the community is looking for. This workshop will be recorded. It's being recorded right now. It's live streamed via the Clerks of Courts, our Facebook page, and it will be posted on our social media channels after the broadcast and our website. So now I want to introduce to you your Orange County Clerk of Courts, Tiffany Moore Russell. Tiffany.
Thank you, Dane, and hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We thought this would be a timely and critical topic to discuss in today's environment. Your participation today shows that you are doing your part in raising awareness for domestic violence victims and survivors. I want to acknowledge my communications and outreach staff who have worked hard in bringing this event to fruition. I also want to acknowledge our webinar panelists who have taken their time to join us here today. From my office, we have Family Divisions Operations Assistant Manager Jose Villan. From Harbor House of Central Florida, we have CEO Michelle Spurzel. From Victim Services Advocates, we have Emilia Mitchell, and from the Orlando Police Department, we have Officers Richard Patterson and DeCarlos Hill. My office, along with these organizations, are here to help you stay safe. Domestic violence impacts everyone, whether you have experienced it personally or know a family member or friend or coworker that was affected. According to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. Clerks Against Domestic Violence is one of the many workshops in our strategic outreach efforts that raise awareness of domestic violence and preventative resources. The Orange County Clerks of Courts is an advocate for putting an end to the violence. Our Family Services Injunction team helps those affected by either domestic, sexual, dating, or stalking violence obtain restraining orders for protection. We hope you enjoyed this presentation this evening, and thank you again for joining us. Dane, I give it back to you.
Thank you very much, Clerk Russell. So yes, we have lots of presentations, numerous presentations to share with you tonight. And of course, this is very timely because October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, why we do this every year. So stand by for some good presentations, and we're going to call up next our Self-Help and Family Division Operations Assistant Manager, Jose Villan, who is now going to share with us how the clerk's office can help in cases of domestic violence with restraining orders or injunctions. Jose, take it away.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jose Villan, and I'm the Operations Assistant Manager for the Family Services and the Self-Help Center. So I've been with the clerk office roughly like 20 years. So I'm going to be speaking about what is an injunction and what's the process. Next. So what is an injunction? Basically, an injunction is a protection order, commonly known as, most people know as a restraining order, which keep an individual for doing a harm to you or committed act of violence. Next. Order of protection might include many requirements, and when one of the stuff that include in an order of protection might include the person that is living with you to be out of the house. It can also prevent the respondent or the person committing the act of violence against you to coming from place of employment, where this school where the kids go. And in some cases, even child support is even ordered in a restraining order. Next. An injunction or restraining order, there's 5 types of injunction. And what is very important in here is that once you come to our office, we're going to give you a brochure that is going to give you a description of each category. And it's important you select the right category, otherwise the court might dismiss your case. Next. A domestic violence is the most common one that is filed, and it's a restraining order that is basically against you, a husband, a person that you're living with, a person that you have children, and it's different categories that it goes into domestic violence. Next. So like I stated, so individuals who are spouses, former spouses, individuals that reside together or have reside together as a family, for example, brother, sister, and sometimes and individuals that have child in common. Next. A stalking restraining order is you file this when you feel threatening for your life and somebody's trying to harm you. And with intent, it's when somebody trying to do some harm to you. And for example, somebody following you on the internet, making threats against your life. Next. A repeat violence. This is very important in that we know in repeat violence, when you file this type of restraining order, there has to be 2 acts of violence. And this normally is filed against a co-worker, a neighbor that is doing stuff to you. But the key when you file a repeat violence category is they have to have 2 acts of violence. If you don't follow those steps, the court might dismiss you petition. Next. Sexual violence. This is when, first of all, this has to be reported to the police, and the person has to be convicted in order to file the sexual violence. Normally, this is filed against on behalf of children, but like stated in the slide, it's a sexual battery, luring or enticing a child, sexual performance by a child, and any other forcible felony. So the respondent must have been sentenced to prison, and a term expire or is due to expire within 90 days. Next. Dating violence. This is just somebody that you have been dating, and then you have a reasonable cause to believe that that person is trying to do something to you. And like I said, yeah, it's just like a dating violence, somebody that you have been dating for at least 6 months. Next. Type of relationship, dating violence. Individuals have been in dating relationship within the past 6 months, have an expectation or affection for sexual involvement, or have been involved over time and on a continuous basis, including individuals who are only engaged in ordinary business or social context. Next. So what is the fee? What is the fee to file a restraining order? There's no fee to file a restraining order. It's completely free. You will come to our office. We will give you the paperwork and everything that you need to be able to file. Next. How to file a restraining order. So you will come to our office in the downtown courthouse. You will come to the 3rd floor, room 320. Once you come to the courthouse, you're going to be greeted by a triage test that is going to give you a brochure, and you're going to select your 5. You're going to read off the 5 categories. And once you select the new category, we're going to give you the paperwork that you need to file. Once you file the paperwork, you're going to be in your office and you're going to fill out the paperwork. You're going to give it to one of our clerks, and you will file your case. And you're going to get a response the same day to see if the judge will grant you the restraining order. The restraining order is going to be good for 2 weeks. Then at that point, you will have to return to court to see if the court will make it permanent or extend it for more time. Next. Where do you file a restraining order? In the county where you currently residing, the county where the respondent reside, the respondent or the person that you filing the injunction, or the county where the violation occurred. And like I stated, you can file in person in Suite 320 in the Orange County Courthouse. And we open 7:30 to 4. Next. So as you know, due to the pandemic, everything had changed. So our process changed a little bit in our office as well. So you still can come to our office and file you restraining order. However, the hearing that is in 2 weeks is going to be held by virtual by Microsoft Teams. Once you file your paperwork and it's granted, we're going to give you instructions and an email that you will have to send so you can receive the link for your hearing. Next. So once you file your restraining order, you're going to get documents explain you what to do next, how to submit evidence, documentation, how to subpoena witnesses, and all that is going to be detailed in the brochure that we're going to give you. Everything that for your hearing day, everything that you need to be prepared, and everything if you want to bring extra evidence and documentation to court. Next. Next steps. We also partnered with Harbor House, which they have, they can give you a safety plan. They have attorneys and they have a different community resources that can provide to you. And they're located in the 5th floor, room 520 of the courthouse. You can, once you come here to file your paperwork, you can either go to Harbor House first if you want to talk to them first, or once you file, you can talk to the Harbor House and they have counselors inside that will be able to help you with other questions. Next. Also, to file restraining order, you can file 24 hours, 7 days a week to our Florida court e-filing portal. If you go to our website on myorangeclerk.com, you can find instructions how to file through the e-filing portal, and you can also obtain the forms there. Once you get, let's see, if you file on the weekend, you can get the forms filed through the portal, and we will process our next business day, and you get your response. Next. Tips to stay safe. It's important that you call 911 if something happens, because a restraining order is just a piece of paper that you have that can protect you. However, if it's something imminent, you should call 911. You can also contact Harbor House there 24 hours a day to speak to a counselor if you need shelter or a safety plan. Once you file your restraining order and it's approved and you get a final one, and if you feel that that person still continue with the same behavior, you can file a petition for violation or injunction. And we will forward that documentation to the state attorney and law enforcement, and they can make an investigation, and it can, at that moment, it can become a criminal matter. Next. More tips to staying safe. It's important that you, if you share a computer with the abuser, that you either change your password or get a new computer, because you can be hacked and he can get access to all that information. And you should delete all your browsing history. Next. Well, thank you for letting me speak to you, to everybody. If you have any questions in the chat.
All right, Jose, thank you very much for that great information. We don't have any questions at this point, but if anybody watching out there in our community and joining us tonight does have a question, just simply type it into the Q&A function you see at the bottom of your screen. Click in there and you can type that in. And if you'd like more information about the Clerk of Courts Family Services Division, you can always visit our website, as Jose was sharing, myorangeclerk.com, and there is specific information on there about filing an injunction. Up next now, we have Harbor House of Central Florida, and Harbor House of Central Florida's CEO, Michelle Spurzl, who has our next presentation. Michelle, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me here. So I'm going to be giving everybody kind of the first workshop that we have. We have a new workshop we put together for friends and family of individuals who are experiencing domestic violence. This is something that we do several times a year. And so if this is something that you want to learn more about, please feel free to reach out to Harbor House and you can get into the entire class. It's an 8-week class, and we also have an ongoing support group. The first thing I wanted to talk about is what is the legal definition versus the Harbor House definition or domestic violence provider's definition of domestic violence. And the key part I want to talk about here is really just talking about the fact that domestic violence is more than physical. And when we're looking at what is domestic violence under the legal definition, when you're filing the injunctions that Jose really went over incredibly well, what we want to focus on at providing services is that it's physical, it's emotional, it's sexual, economic, psychological, threats of action, and it's really about coercion of control. And so if you want to move forward, that'd be fantastic. So here are the types of violence that we're going to be working with a survivor with when they're coming to Harbor House for services. We're going to talk through the physical violence that might have happened, and if someone needs a referral to a hospital, or if there is physical need, we'll be working with them in a hospital. There's the financial piece that we have. We have economic empowerment advocates that will be working with people. We go over the emotional abuse that you've experienced, and we do have therapists that would be able to help people. We talk about the sexual parts of domestic violence, and so we'll refer to Victim Service Center. Oftentimes, if someone's experiencing domestic violence, they might be raped by their partner, and so we want to make sure that we're able to provide the rape crisis services, spiritual, and then psychological. And we talk specifically about psychological and gaslighting, and we really talk through how an abuser can do things to you so you really do feel like you are losing your mind, and really bringing someone back to what is normal, what is your reality, and how can we help you with that piece. And giving it a name really is important when we're talking about domestic violence. If you want to move forward, please. Another piece we'll talk about when we're doing our domestic violence 101 with survivors and trainings like this is we really talk about the power and control wheel and how abusers utilize power and control to really put over control on someone who's experiencing domestic violence. And that really goes through some of the types of abuse I was talking about as well. So here you'll see how they'll use emotional abuse, how they can use economic abuse. One thing we talk a lot about when we're working with survivors and friends and family is how is the abuser utilizing the children? Are they threatening to take the kids away? Are they utilizing the children in order to threaten the survivor? When we're working with survivors who are not citizens of the United States, one thing that ends up happening is utilizing their papers or their citizenship, and they're saying, if you report this to law enforcement, you are going to be deported. And we want everybody to know that that is not the case, that it is a human right to be safe, and that if you are experiencing domestic violence, that you can absolutely call law enforcement and work with law enforcement in order to receive services. If you want to move forward, please. I really like to talk to everybody about, here is what domestic violence is, but I often get asked, what are some signs of an abusive relationship? And we really ask people to look beyond the injury. So one is, instead of looking at the injury, look and ask questions about what is the excuse for that injury happening. And then also, do you have a friend who they've experienced different personality changes, such as they've been a really confident person, then all of a sudden they've gotten into a relationship with somebody and you're realizing that their self-esteem is being affected by this. Are they constantly on their phone checking in with their partner saying, okay, I'm going from the gas station to home, or then after I go home, then I'm going to be dropping the kids off, and then I'm going to be going to work. It's something where you think to yourself, gosh, that's a lot of someone keeping tabs on a person. And that's another sign that your friend or your loved one might be in an abusive relationship. Never having money, even though you know that that person makes a good living, or knowing that that person is on a tight budget, which the budget doesn't make sense. Like someone saying, well, I only get $100 in order to go grocery shopping every month. Something of that nature is another sign. Really worried about impressing or pleasing partner. So I have to get home and clean, because if I don't, he will be really upset. And it doesn't make sense. The behavior and the consequence doesn't match in your mind what a healthy relationship might be. Skipping out on things, and you're not really sure why they're skipping out on those different activities. And then, of course, another physical sign would be wearing clothes that don't fit the season, such as wearing long sleeves, wearing a turtleneck when it's really warm out, wearing pants when it's really warm out, things of that nature to keep their entire body hidden. Move forward, please. Warning signs of an abuser, the actual abuser. So here are just a few things that we talk to survivors about, but again, also when we're doing trainings for you to look out for when you're in a relationship or a friend and family. Someone who's incredibly charming, somebody that seems that everybody seems to like them and they don't seem to have any faults whatsoever. So that's actually a red flag. Ooh. I got dark in here. And next one is fast moving relationships. So something where it goes from dating to then moving in with someone right away. And then from moving in with someone to getting engaged right away, that's a huge red flag. We like to see in the social media piece that if it goes from first date to dating on social media, that is another red flag that we talk to people about with warning signs of an abuser. Codependent behavior, but the number one is really isolating that person from all their different friends and family members. Another warning sign of an abuser for people to keep in mind is, have they talked about, or are you asking questions about the relationship that they've had any type of abuse in their past? That's something also to keep in mind, because oftentimes abusers have been abused in their past, or they had a parent that they saw abuse another person in their family. And so that's something else to ask about. And if it is something that's there and some of these other things fall in line, then you have a series of red warning flags. Next, please. We also like to talk about, domestic violence isn't just about the two people in the relationship, but there is secondary trauma, and it does impact the entire family unit. So it's going to be like the children who are in the family, or it's going to be the parents of the person who's being abused. It might be a brother or sister who really wants to help that person and doesn't know how, or they might be the one who's listening to the person process that they want to get out of the relationship. And again, friends and coworkers. We talk a lot about coworkers and also the impact coworkers can have on a domestic violence relationship, because coworkers often see people more than parents, siblings, and friends. They're the ones who are seeing you possibly Monday through Friday or Tuesday through Saturday. And they're the ones who are noticing that you're losing weight. They're the ones who are noticing that the person has bruises. They're the ones who are noticing more of the whole checking in behavior. They're the ones who are seeing all the different phone calls that are coming in. And so also, if something does happen to an individual, then we are going to be talking through how does that impact the workplace in addition to all of these other places. Next, please. We also talk about domestic violence myths and facts about domestic violence, that drugs and alcohol cause the abuse. That is untrue. Drugs and alcohol do not cause someone to have power and control over another person. It might increase the lethality of it. It might increase the frequency of it, but drugs and alcohol do not cause abuse itself. A survivor or a victim never brings abuse upon themselves. That is really one reason that domestic violence exists, is it's because it's another person abusing another person, and the victim is not the person who brought it on. It's more than physical, and we've already talked about that. It's easy to leave, just pack a bag and go. It's like saying it's very easy to file an injunction and then you're just all good. It's not that easy. There's so many different layers that go into it. And also oftentimes when someone is filing the injunction or when they are leaving, that's the most dangerous time. And domestic violence happens in all families. There is, it doesn't see any race, it doesn't see any socioeconomic, it doesn't see anything. And so domestic violence can happen to anybody. Next, please. I want to talk through, and this is going to be a slide you'll have to click a lot through. This is going to be some of the different services that Harbor House offers. And so we have two different main branches to what Harbor House offers. And so here I put you in a place of, oh my gosh, these are all the different signs of it, but how can I help my friend, or how can I get help? If you want to click the other slide, that'd be great for both boxes to come up. So we have two different sides to Harbor House. We have what people think of when they think about a domestic violence center. We have our crisis hotline, we have our emergency shelter, and we have inside of our campus, we actually have childcare. And so those are things that people think about when they think about domestic violence, but we're really all encompassing. So thank you, Jose, for mentioning that we are going to be in the courthouse as well. We have advocates there, and we also have Injunction for protection attorneys. We also out in the community, we have support groups, we have advocacy, we have our advocates that are co-located with law enforcement. We have advocates that are co-located with child protection agencies. We have our own transitional housing program, both on campus and off campus. So these are for people who have already moved out or are on their own. They've been in a domestic violence situation and they're working to be on the other side. And these are also services that are available to someone who might still be in a domestic violence situation and they don't plan on leaving the abuser right now, but they still need support. On the other side, our hotline, our residential services, those are all for people who are in immediate crisis and they need to come in and receive services right away. We offer them all the same things that we have in outreach, but it's just, we're also providing them with a roof over their head. And we're also providing them with the, if they have kennel, they can bring their dog in. If they have children, they can bring their kids in, we have access to childcare. And then we also have our youth program that is outside, although it falls under youth and children, and that's going to be our Leaders of Courage, our Camp Hope. That's where we're doing prevention work with the kids in the community. And Trailblazers is a new program that we have that we started with COVID of our kids who are on site, who we want to make sure that we're working with them on prevention programming, working with them really on perseverance, and working with them on resiliency skills, and really helping continue to build their hope. Next, please. We also talk about Harbor House being an empowerment-based agency. And we talk about that because a lot of the people that are coming to us, or survivors that we're working with, that during that point in time in their life, that they do not feel strong, they do not feel confident because someone has been controlling their life. And so where we're coming from is that we are empowerment-based, that we want to bring and let people get their power back. So if you are a friend or a family member, or you're a service provider and you've worked with Harbor House before, and you don't understand why you're saying, why are you not letting her in? I know she needs the help. We're empowerment based, so we need that survivor to call us. We need to talk to her so we can talk through all of her different circumstances and have her make the decision of what kind of services that it is that she wants, that she needs. Because even though you might be someone who really is ready for that person to leave, that person themselves might not be at that point. And we know that it's only going to stick. It's only going to be the right thing if that person is ready to take that next step. So that's what we mean by empowerment based. Next, please. We talk a lot about safety planning as well. Our safety planning at Harbor House is different than the safety planning that law enforcement might do, or that Department of Children and Family might do with the child protection. It might be different than guardian ad litem. What we're really doing is we are making a custom fit safety plan for that individual that really tucks through all the different aspects of their life to make sure that they are physically and emotionally safe. So we talk through, if you are living at home with the abuser, how can you stay safe in your home? And what might be a safety room? How do you bring those children into the safety plan? What to put in your to-go bag. Here in Florida, it's a lot easier for someone to put together a to-go bag because we talk about it being a hurricane bag. That if you pack up all the same things that you need when you're leaving for a hurricane, those are the same things we offer, and we ask survivors to put in a go bag. So that's another thing. We also talk about safety planning, including kids in it, including the pets in it. And this is something that we constantly update because people's circumstances and life circumstances change. If we're working with a survivor over the course of several months, she might have a new job. She might not have a car and then get a car. She might go to school all of a sudden. So we are constantly talking to the different people we're working with and making sure that all of those aspects of safety are put into play. Next, please. We already talked about the injunction for protection, but it is a really great tool. And so, here we call it an injunction for protection. You might know about it from media or movies as a restraining order. And so this is something that someone can file in order for emergency protection to stop further abuse. And then Jose did a great job going through the different types of injunctions. Next, please. And I love this slide because it takes an entire community in order for us to really respond to domestic violence. And these are all the different people that we work with on a very close basis in order to really work with survivors and also hold perpetrators accountable. So law enforcement, they are on both sides. They're helping survivors. They're also going to be holding perpetrators accountable. The state attorney's office, the same thing. Department of Children and Family, medical, mental health, the clerk of courts. Those are all people that we are working with in order to help solve domestic violence in our community. And when we're talking about mental health, one thing we're talking about, especially since COVID, mental health is rising more to the top as far as an issue within our state as it should be. And so with mental health, what I like to say is that someone who is experiencing mental health or PTSD, they can get that from experiencing domestic violence, but mental health does not cause domestic violence. That someone who's experiencing abuse is not someone who is in need of mental health services because he or she is having a crisis. It's more or less that the violence and the trauma that they experienced is why they are needing services and counseling. Next, please. I like to put this slide in here because it's also a really good one for if you are working with somebody and you have a friend or a family member or a coworker that is experiencing domestic violence, or you're nervous for them and you want to be able to talk to them. How do you do this? I know that we're going to talk a little bit more about bystander stuff, but a good thing for you to say is to remember that we don't want to blame the victim or the survivor for the abuse that they're experiencing. So it's making sure that you're holding yourself back from saying you caused this or anything that might be considered victim blaming. So a good way to start off is saying, I'm afraid I, Michelle, or Emily, I am scared for you. I'm afraid for your safety, and I'm going to own that. And I want to talk to you about it. I'm afraid for the safety of your kids. And so that you're thinking about not just them, but also I'm scared for your family as well. Reminding someone that they don't deserve to be treated that way. And don't say he's treating you poorly, just saying, I don't feel you deserve to be treated this way. Reminding someone that there's always help available. I listed all of the other people that help with domestic violence survivors. And then the biggest thing is here is I know it's hard when you're seeing someone go through domestic violence. The abuser wants you to give up. The abuser wants that person to be isolated. And so to make a statement that you are here for them, no matter what, is so very important for someone to feel taken care of and know that they can reach out to you at any time. Next, please. And then finally, I'm going to end with a couple of different ways that if you want to get engaged with Harbor House, you know, the ways that you can get engaged with us. One would be a volunteer. We have volunteers and interns that do a lot of direct service. They're helping out in admin. They're helping out in operations. We have different events. We have our board service that we have, and we also have a young professional committee as well. So if you're ever engaged and want to get more engaged with being part of the solution, then we would love to talk to you. And then the next slide, I believe, is our events that we have coming up. And these are the different times of year that we have our different events. As we mentioned before, that it is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So we have our Domestic Violence Conference tomorrow. So if that's something you're interested in, you can always go to our social media page to find out more about it. We're having two different trainers. We have domestic violence and immigration, and we're also doing mutual combat. So we have two different national speakers that are coming in. It's a virtual conference. We have our Purple Door Luncheon, which is actually going to be in February. Because of COVID, we moved it. We have handbags for hope and gifts of hope as well. So those are some of the other things we have coming up. And I think then this is just so everybody knows. With COVID, one thing we added is we wanted to make sure that people could reach out to us the best way that they could reach out to us. So you can call or you can text this number. This is a great number for you to memorize, and you can share with anybody who might need services here in the Orange County area. So thank you again for being here. Thank you for learning more about domestic violence and how you can recognize the signs and how you can be an advocate yourself. It's going to take the entire community. And as I mentioned, thank you for everybody for all the support that you give to Harbor House and survivors in our local area.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. But don't go away, because your presentation prompted a lot of questions, or a good amount of questions. So you mentioned immigration tomorrow, which is a good segue to this first question, which is, are you sure that someone won't get deported if they call law enforcement?
Yes. And we also have Sheriff Mina, that's something that he also talks about, and he has pledged as well, that you will not get deported if you report domestic violence. That is something that the abuser is saying to you to keep you in that situation.
Okay. Next question that we had is, what are the qualifications to get into a shelter? I mean, how bad off do you have to be? What about men? Do you have help for them?
Yes, we do have the way that Harbor House is set up. We have different one-bedroom rooms and one-bedroom apartments within our emergency shelter so that we are able to have men come in. And really, it's about safety. It's about the fact that you do not have a place to go where you can feel safe. We also have entire families come in. So we've had, when I say that, we had an abuser that showed up at mom's house. And so daughter was living there, mom was living there, and grandma was living there with two of the kids. Everybody ended up coming in because the abuser ended up pulling a gun in the room. And so we brought everybody in for safety purposes. And so it's really about being clear about what is your situation when you call our emergency crisis line, and talking to everybody about what it is that you need. If it is safer for you to stay with your friends and family, then we're going to say stay with your friends and family, and we'll offer you support. But if you have no place to go, then coming into the emergency shelter, Harbor House, Help Now, Safe House of Seminole, CASA, St. Pete, the Spring, all of us follow that same protocol.
Harbor House is in Orange County. So our next question is related to, what if a person is in Lake County and the injunction as well as a criminal case is in Lake County? Is Harbor House still an option for counseling resources, or do they need to go somewhere in Lake County?
So that's going to depend on the person themselves and where they want to go. So if that person is in Lake County, the criminal case, the civil case, or the injunction is in Lake County, but they live in Orange County and they want to seek sources from us, that's totally fine. We do that all the time, especially with all of our different surrounding counties. We do it with Osceola, we do it with Seminole as well. And so it's up to the person and where they want to seek services.
Okay, our next question that came in, we had a bunch of them come in all at the same time as you were presenting. What if someone has a son over the age of 18? Can they stay at the shelter with their mother?
So that's going to be on a case-by-case basis. And so it really depends on the type of child that your 18-year-old is. So if you have an 18-year-old, that's going to be, it's going to just really be case by case. There's so many different scenarios, and that's one reason it would be good to call the emergency crisis line and have that conversation. My immediate answer is not no. It's going to be on a case by case.
Okay. Also, another question. My ex has a no contact order, filing for injunction soon, and repeatedly violates it. Law enforcement acknowledges it's him, but because the calls, texts are coming from fake numbers and he calls himself someone else, they can't do anything. What happens then?
Ooh, that's a great conversation for some of our partners from the state attorney's office. Like, that's a great question. But I can say this, is that you will be able to, you can really touch base with the state attorney's office and ask them different ways that you can be able to track that it's actually him. There's other ways for you to be able to work on those fake numbers to find out how those fake numbers trace back to where he or she was at that time. And you just said X, I'm not sure. But that's a really good one for, I would say, to follow up with one of our advocates, and then we'll be able to.
Okay. And I'm just going to combine two questions here. We actually had a question of somebody on our forum that was asking about what is Harbor House, and then how can you volunteer? So maybe give us an explanation to those who don't really know what is Harbor House and what do you do?
That's awful of me. I'm so sorry. Thank you for whoever asked that question. So Harbor House, we're the certified domestic violence center that serves here in Orange County. And there are 41 domestic violence centers that are across the state. And what we end up doing is we end up working with domestic violence survivors and victims here in Orange County to provide them emergency shelter, crisis hotline. We work with them as far as advocacy, helping them file injunctions for protection, and then also with some of our legal help. And then also, whoever asked the question about the injunction, I was going to say, I'd be remiss if I wouldn't refer you to one of our injunction for protection attorneys. So if you wanted to call and see if you can talk to one of our injunction for protection attorneys, they can help you with that question too. Hold on, my lights went out again. I'm talking, I'm not moving.
Okay. Motion.
Yes.
Detectors, right? Okay, so another question is, does Harbor House take care packages, or is there a list of items that could be provided if needed from community members?
Yes, if you go to our website, we have a wish list on there. And you can always send us an email at contact@harborhousefl.com, and we can email that to you as well. We do take care packages. And if someone's wondering what our number one needs are, our number one need are always large size diapers. When kids come in, they often, because they've experienced trauma, they start wetting their bed again, or they just revert back. And so that's always our largest need, would be large size diapers.
Okay, and another question that just came in, is Harbor House the only shelter in Orange County? Shelter of this kind.
Yes, we are the only certified domestic violence shelter here in Orange County. Yes.
Great. Okay. All right. That seems to be a lot of the Harbor House related questions. Now, we had 3 other questions that came in just as I was transitioning from Jose from the clerk's office to you, Michelle. So I'm going to go through these, and we have received some of the answers through Jose, who shared them with us. But when does the state attorney's office step in with the restraining order, was the question. So once final injunction is ordered by the court, if the respondent violates the terms of the injunction, the person can come to our office, as in the clerk's office, and file a violation of injunction. And at that point, we forward the documents to their office, meaning the state attorney's office. So that's the answer on that. Another question was, what if something happens after 4 p.m.? Where can you go? Because Jose was talking about our office hours here at the clerk's office. Well, so the answer to that one is after 4 p.m. you can call law enforcement, and Harbor House can also assist. Correct, Michelle?
So after 4 p.m., yes, people can reach out to our crisis line. But as
Okay.
far as filing an after-hour injunction, that we don't have that in our county, and so filing after-hour injunction, you would really have to wait until 8 o'clock the next morning.
Yeah, it can be actually online on our website,
Right.
myorangeclerk.com. You can get the information on there if you absolutely need to file an injunction after hours, and it can be filed through the e-portal. So that is
Yes.
another avenue, which is an electronic system to file for an
Yes.
injunction. Yeah, e-portal. Okay, and then the last question we had here, are there advocates in the state attorney's office that can help with the application? How do they get involved? And the answer is yes, the clerk's office can assist at the courthouse with the forms and answer any questions. Also, Harbor House can assist with domestic violence cases and having an attorney on site that can assist as well. So that is the answer we got. So Michelle, you all have an attorney on site?
We have 4 injunction for protection attorneys that can help. But if there's going to be an additional, like a criminal attorney or a family law attorney where someone needs a referral, we would be working with our different pro bono attorneys that we work with.
Okay, great. And of course, the clerk's office also has a self-help center that could possibly assist if you're needing attorney consultation. But so a few more questions coming in. Jose?
Hey,
Yep.
then just to clarify, the self-help center, the attorneys there do not assist with domestic violence cases.
Okay.
However,
Yeah.
the person can come in to our office, we give them the appropriate paperwork, and if it's a domestic violence case, Harbor House can help. If it's any other type of injunction, they still can file the paperwork. We can answer the questions as much as we can.
Great. Yeah, gotcha. Thanks for clarifying that one. Appreciate that. We have about 3 more questions that have come in. So, and then hopefully we'll be able to move on to our next presentation. What if it has been more than 6 months since actual violence, but you repeatedly receive harassing, unwanted messages, pictures, and visits at your home?
That is something that happens a lot within domestic violence situations. And so if your question is, can you still receive services from Harbor House? The answer is absolutely. Within our, you can do it within our outreach office, or if you are not feeling safe at your house, you can reach out to us to receive shelter as well. We know that people who are perpetrating domestic violence, once you leave, that's when they want to make sure that they can keep you engaged and keep you under control and or try and gain back that control. And so we're working with individuals and they've been out of the relationship for years even, and they still have their abuser come back in.
Also, then they still can file their restraining order, and it will be up to the court to determine at that point if they're going to grant it or not.
That's a really great point, Jose. And that's also a good reason why it's nice to work with an injunction for protection attorney, because they can help build a timeline that includes. So if you might say, I want to file this, but the violence happened 6 months ago, the attorney can talk through all the different things that the person has done that has been threatening or made you feel unsafe to include in that petition.
Gotcha. Okay. What if law enforcement isn't any help? What can you do?
So I would have to say, when you're saying that law enforcement isn't any help, it's going to be, what is it that you need help with? And so that's the other piece. And so if you're saying that law enforcement isn't any help because they responded and no one was arrested, or they responded and there was no arrest, that it's really working through what is that you need help with. And so reaching out to an advocate or reaching out to the clerk in order to file an injunction is something that is an option. If you are feeling that you're not receiving services, the best thing that you can do is reach out to another service provider for aid and support, because we are co-located with law enforcement. And so we can match you up with an advocate that's working specifically with either Orange County or OPD or APOCA in order to talk through what might be happening.
Great, thank you. And Harbor House's website address.
We are at harborhousefl.com.
Great. Michelle Spurzl, CEO of Harbor House. Thank you for your presentation, helping us to answer many of these questions, Jose, as well. So we're going to move on now to the next presentation that we have here for our forum. And again, if you are wanting to submit a question, submit it through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, not chat. Chat is not enabled. Just go through the Q&A and you can type in your question there. So up next, we have Emily Mitchell with the Victim Service Center of Central Florida, who has some important information on sexual assault resources and how to be an active bystander. Thank you for joining us, Emily.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you everyone once again for joining us and learning more about domestic violence and other violence that happens in an effort to help prevent it in our community. You know, Michelle mentioned that one of the things that can happen in domestic violence situations, like she mentioned, it's not just always, you know, physical violence. There can be emotional violence, there can be psychological violence, and there can also be sexual violence. Actually, according to the CDC, nearly 1 in 10 women have been sexually assaulted by an intimate partner in her lifetime, and 17% of women and 8% of men actually have experienced sexual violence other than rape, which can include groping, unwanted sexual touching, and things like that by an intimate partner too. So we're seeing that a lot of times it does take a whole community, like Michelle mentioned. And so today I wanted to talk specifically about the VSC, the Victim Service Center, the services that we provide for sexual assault victims and other survivors of trauma. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about active bystander training too, which is one of the prevention education programs that we offer completely free to anyone in the community. So let's go ahead and get started. So if you haven't heard of the VSC or the Victim Service Center before, essentially we're a nonprofit organization that provides free, confidential, individualized services and resources to survivors of any kind of trauma. So that trauma can include sexual assault. It can include also a survivor of any kind of violent crime, maybe a survivor of a home invasion, for example, maybe a survivor of stalking, for example. And we do that in a variety of different ways. Another thing I like to mention too is that it doesn't matter when the trauma occurred. It could have happened today. It could be the crisis is happening in this moment. Or perhaps the trauma happened in the past. For example, a lot of the survivors that walk through our doors may be adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse, for example. We're able to provide those services completely free, no matter when the trauma occurred. And we do it through a variety of different ways. So we do it through our crisis response, advocacy, and therapy. So I'm going to go through each one. And essentially, we just want to transform victims' lives and prevent violence in our community. So like I mentioned, trauma can look a lot of different things, a lot of different ways, right? So these are just some of the different victimization types that we see from our survivors that walk through our doors. So that it can include elder abuse, it can include homicide survivors, human trafficking, robbery, home invasion, physical assault, like Michelle mentioned, a lot of the survivors at, you know, the domestic violence shelters, if they're experiencing other victimizations or looking for free counseling and things like that, VSC can also come in. Secondary victims, so Michelle also mentioned that it can infect a whole family unit, for example. So when someone goes through a trauma firsthand, we call them the primary survivor, right? That's the words that we use. So those are the people who went through the trauma themselves, but also who is affected or could be affected are secondary survivors. So that person's supporters, loved ones, maybe their partner. So essentially, they also are affected by the trauma, so we're able to get those services to them as well. They also need support. Like I mentioned, it doesn't matter when the trauma occurred, so adults abused as children are also some of the survivors that walk through our doors, and of course, sexual assault. So in addition to being a nonprofit organization The Victim Service Center is also the certified rape crisis center for Orange, Seminole, and Osceola counties. I know that someone mentioned earlier, asked a question if Harbor House is the only shelter in Orange County. Similar to that, there can only be one certified rape crisis center in a county. So throughout the US, there are rape crisis centers in each county, or there should be. So we're the rape crisis center for Orange, Seminole, and Osceola. So a lot of the survivors that we work with are survivors of sexual assault, but it can also be survivors of drunk driving, victimization, stalking, and harassment. Again, this is not a complete list. We don't like to define trauma for individuals. Essentially, if there was an event and a survivor is having trouble, processing it and moving forward, that's really the survivors that we work with. And I also like to mention that there can be some overlapping victimizations, right? So maybe a survivor of domestic violence may also be experiencing sexual assault, like Michelle mentioned. So I like to say that that is also very common with the survivors that we work with. So what are those services that we provide? So first off, I want to talk about our advocacy services. And the main thing that I like to mention is our 24-hour helpline, which is right there at the bottom right corner there, which is 407-500-HEAL, HEAL, truly 24 hours. Anyone can call that number if they're going through a crisis in that moment, if they're feeling overwhelmed or heightened. They can speak immediately to a crisis counselor or one of our victim advocates who are all master's level. They're all trauma informed. They actually go through specific training to work with survivors of sexual violence and other trauma. A really important piece to it too is that we have the fortunate benefit and privilege to be confidential through Florida law. And so whatever is spoken to with the victim advocate will remain within that relationship. It'll be confidential. And if the survivor ever would like to have that information come out for if they're going through the justice system or for whatever reason, they can absolutely give that consent, but we would need their consent to do so. And our victim advocates are also bilingual. So we have a lot of Spanish-speaking advocates as well. In addition to that 24-hour helpline, survivors can also benefit from case management with our victim advocates. They can refer. So for example, if they do have a survivor that is looking for shelter services, for example, we can refer them to places like Harbor House, like Safe House, or Help Now of Osceola. They can also help with the criminal justice system. So if a survivor is looking to file an injunction, one of our survivors can, one of our victim advocates can assist with that process. Essentially also victims compensation. So if someone's gone through a victimization, they can also apply to the victims compensation program. And we actually have an advocate who specializes specifically in this, so they can help with the paperwork process and things like that. They can also accompany survivors to things like forensic exams, which I'll get to momentarily, and also court accompaniment. So if someone decides that, going through the justice system is part of their healing journey, our victim advocates can join them in court as emotional support and things like that. And essentially they can do immediate crisis counseling, and they can also do some safety planning as well. So in addition to our victim advocates, we also have that forensic exam. So one of the things that I want to mention is that all of our services are available to survivors completely free for individuals 12 and up, and also regardless of whether or not they want to report. That is completely the survivor's decision. And so we're able to provide free services regardless if they would like to report or not. One of the other amazing services that we're able to provide to the Central Florida community as a certified rape crisis center is that we do forensic exams or DNA evidence collection. You may have heard of this before, as commonly known as a rape kit. So essentially within 120 hours or 5 days of a sexual assault occurring, someone can call our 24-hour helpline, be connected with one of our victim advocates, and then from there, we can meet them, the victim advocate who they spoke with on the phone, and one of our certified SANE nurses or sexual assault nurse examiners who go through a specific training just to do this type of process will meet there as well, 24 hours. And this will be at one of our 2 confidential forensic exam locations. So essentially that is to collect that DNA evidence, whether or not that survivor wants to report. They do have to do it within 120 hours so that they can use that DNA evidence in a court of law. So perhaps a survivor in that moment is feeling very overwhelmed and they don't know if they do want to report or not. They can still get this evidence collected because maybe further down the line, they would like to report. Then we have the evidence and we're able to store it for them completely free. In addition to that, we also can provide prophylaxis or Plan B for survivors who believe that they may have become pregnant or contracted an STI from the victimization as well. And same nurses can also be testimony trial people as well. So they can be in the courtroom as well. And this is for survivors 12 and up. Anyone who is younger than that, they would just be referred to the Children's Advocacy Center because it's a different process for the forensic exam. And the last piece of, direct care services that I wanted to talk about today is our therapy department. And you may be wondering why we separate our advocacy department from our therapy department. And it's a really good question. So when someone is going through a crisis or has just gone through a trauma, they are looking perhaps to be grounded. They want some like breathing techniques to, move forward, filing an injunction and things like that. But maybe later on in their healing journey, they would like to do a more complicated processing of the trauma that occurred, maybe a deeper dive, maybe one-on-one therapy and things like that. And that's really where our therapy department comes into play. So this is also completely free to survivors. And it's also available for primary and secondary victims too. And there is one-on-one therapy with one of our amazing trauma-informed therapists that are all contract therapists that are licensed through the state of Florida. They also use different, evidence-based treatments like EMDR therapy and DBT specifically for trauma survivors. And then in addition to that one-on-one therapy, there's also support groups. So we have survivor meetups, we have men's meetups because sexual violence happens to men as well, Black survivors of intimate partner violence as well, an LGBTQ plus support group or Rainbow Resilience. We have a Spanish speaking group, lots of different groups that come up as well so that individuals know that they're not alone and that they can speak to other survivors and heal in that communal way. A lot of our services are still online. We do have some in person, so support groups are also an online, also available online too. So those are our direct care services that I wanted to talk about today. And one of the other services that we provide to the community is prevention education, which is my role. So I'm the prevention education coordinator at the Victim Service Center of Central Florida. And we teach on a lot of different things like sexual harassment, sexual assault. We also teach on healthy relationships. We also teach on active bystander training. And I thought that it was kind of timely to talk about it, especially what happened in Philadelphia, where a person was being sexually assaulted and no one did anything and jumped in. So how can we be a bystander and how can we safely intervene to help prevent things that happen in the community, right? So I first want to this is pulling from our active bystander training that I give to the community. So first off, I'd like to first start off with talking about what is a bystander. And essentially a bystander is a witness. It's someone who is in a position to understand what is happening and is also in a position to take action, right? And there's a lot of different things that we're bystanders every day, right? Whether we mean to be or not. But we can actually break it down even further from just being a bystander, right? We can look at passive or complicit bystanders, and then we can also look at active bystanders. So a passive bystander could be someone who sees a situation happening and chooses not to do anything to help stop it. And they can look a few different ways and they can act a few different ways. So one, it could be someone who accepts or approves a situation. Maybe they laugh in the situation as well instead of jumping in. They may just simply ignore it, pretend that they're not seeing it, maybe just look down at their phone, walk away. They may even join in on what's going on. They may document it. What do we mean by that? That could be someone who decides to pull their phone out in video or take pictures of it. Maybe they decide to live tweet about it, things like that. And then, like I mentioned earlier, it could also be someone who decides to walk away. So that's the passive bystander. And we should all try to aim to be an active bystander, right? So that's essentially someone who has that moral courage to safely intervene and stop a potentially dangerous situation. And they could look a few different ways too. So it could be someone who tells a harm doer what they're doing is wrong, that their actions are wrong. It could be someone who just simply takes action to do something. And we'll talk a little bit about how that could look as well. It could be someone who just makes the victim or target feel better, checks in with them, asks them if they're okay. And they do help try to stop the situation, right? So this is really what we mean by prevention, right? So active bystander is a term that people use. I've also heard of upstander as well. So whatever works for you, but essentially someone who jumps in and tries to prevent a situation from happening, right? But, that's all good and well and done, right? But there's real barriers, right? Why are reasons why people might not take action? There's reasons why people choose to be passive bystanders, right? This is absolutely not a complete list, but maybe just think about your own barriers as we go through it, right? Everyone has them. So a main one that I hear a lot is that it's not my responsibility. Someone else will handle it. Unsure if help is needed. Maybe someone's afraid of looking like a fool, that they misinterpreted the situation. Maybe they have fear of retaliation, a fear of what might happen if they do jump in. And then I hear this one a lot too, I just didn't know what to do. So that's really what I'm here for, is to kind of give people the tools and let them know that there's more than one way to jump in, and keeping in mind that your safety is your top priority, right? And also I like to kind of highlight the unsure if help is needed. I would rather err on the side of, jumping in and being wrong than the alternative, right? But these are real barriers, and it's important that we talk about them. So what are those options? What are those different things that we can do to help jump in and protect our community and people in our lives, right? So I like to talk about the 3 Ds. Which are essentially intervention techniques or things that people can do to help intervene and jump in and help potentially stop a dangerous situation from happening. And those 3 Ds are distract, direct, and delegate. So let's go through each one and talk about some examples of them, right? So distract. So it's essentially you're diverting attention. You can be distracting someone enough to discontinue the abusive behavior. This is not a complete list either, and this can be really creative when we talk about distract, but this could be, spilling a drink at a party or something, or telling the abuser their car is being towed, or making up some kind of excuse, just diverting attention. It could be someone going up to someone, like maybe they don't even know someone, and they go up to them and say, hey, so-and-so is looking for you, and just getting them out of that situation and then checking in with them and say, hey, is everything okay? I noticed this. I just want to make sure that you're safe. It could be also women often, go to the bathroom with each other, right? So it could be like, hey, I'm feeling unsafe. Can you come with me to the bathroom real quick, and then check in with them there? Just kind of taking them out of the situation, distracting, and things like that. This is a really great option for individuals who don't want to directly intervene, or maybe they are worried about retaliation. This can kind of diffuse the situation too. But another option is delegate, right? And so that's delegating the intervention to someone else. And there's power in safety in numbers. So again, safety is your top priority. So there are so many people in our community that we can delegate to and let them know, like, hey, I see this is happening. I'm very concerned about it. Can you help me with this, right? So you can delegate absolutely to a friend, of course. We could also delegate to a bartender. Maybe you're seeing something happening at a bar. Maybe you're seeing a domestic violence situation. You see someone is acting a little controlling, seeing those red flags that Michelle was mentioning. You can check in with the bartender and say, hey, I'm seeing this. I'm really concerned about it. I just want to make sure that they get home safely, things like that, right? Someone you trust, essentially. And then also law enforcement, right? You can, if it's really serious, you can delegate to them as well. And I like to mention that you are still being an active bystander by delegating, right? If this is the best course of action to keep you safe, absolutely, this is a great option. And then another one is also direct. So I think that's the one that we think of mostly, but it's essentially taking action and directly addressing the situation. But it's not just like jumping in, like maybe we think of like Marvel movie characters or something like that. It can look a little different too. So it can directly pointing out the problem and saying, what you're doing isn't okay. That's not consent. That's abusive, right? It can let the abuser know that what they're doing is wrong. Maybe you're seeing someone in your life who is doing controlling behaviors, and you're like, hey, that's controlling what's happening, right? And then you can ask the victim if they're okay too. You can check in and say, hey, I'm a little concerned. Like Michelle mentioned, I am concerned for you, you know, and just checking if is everything okay, and then just hearing them out and hearing different ways that you can help jump in. So those are just the 3 Ds. So the last thing I'm going to just talk about is, okay, now that we have these intervention techniques, how can we implement them? How can we do a safe intervention? So what are those steps to a safe intervention, right? So what's the step-by-step process? So first off, we have to notice the situation. So congratulations, you are now officially a bystander. So you had to notice the situation first. But the next thing that has to happen is that you also have to interpret the situation as a problem. You have to kind of trust your gut and think, you know what, something's not sitting right with me. I think something's going on. I want to jump in. And then you also have to take the responsibility to intervene. Ask yourself, if not me, who, right? And then you have to decide how you will safely intervene. So of course, that includes, you know, the 3 Ds. Do you want to delegate? Do you want to distract? Do you want to do a mixture of the two? And then, of course, keeping in mind safety. And then you take that action and help stop a potentially dangerous situation. So that's the step-by-step process. But how do we make sure that we're in a safe space in doing this? How do we make sure that our safety is our top priority? Because it absolutely is. So just ask yourself these questions. How can I keep myself safe? Who else may be able to assist me? And what are all the options available to me? Once again, thinking about all those people that you can delegate to, all the resources that are available in your community, things like that. So that is really important when we want to be active bystanders, is keeping your safety your top priority. And that's really kind of the end of my little spiel here. I just want to thank you all once again. These are just some resources I wanted to share with you all. Of course, the VSC is here 24/7. That's our crisis line, 407-500-HEAL. I also want to mention, if you have questions, so you can always reach out to us on our office line too. If you have like immediate crisis response questions, of course, you can call on behalf of a survivor as well if you have questions. But maybe you just have questions in general that aren't in a crisis situation. That's what our office line is for. So we have that for you all. Of course, Harbor House is available. United Way is also an amazing resource. They can point you in the direction of different resources depending on what you're looking for. The Trevor Project's amazing for survivors or anyone who is part of the LGBTQ+ community. There's online counseling, National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and the Trans Lifeline as well. But that's all that I have for you today. And I just want to thank you all again for being here. And I want to thank the Clerk of Courts for doing this event as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Emily. So we had a couple of questions come in after you were presenting, and I think this is probably a question for you, and probably a question for Michelle, which is, we have a question about, do you all accept volunteers? So at the Victim Service Center, I assume you do accept volunteers?
Yes, we do. Actually, I started at the VSC as a volunteer. So volunteering is very near and dear to my heart. So absolutely, we do a lot of different events like outreach and things like that. And we cater it to, you know, your strengths and what you're interested in to see how you can get involved and give back. So yeah, if you're interested, you could just go to our website, which is victimservicecenter.org, go under the Get Involved tab, and you'll see more information on how to become a volunteer.
Yeah, and also if you're looking to volunteer with Harbor House, Michelle answered this question in our Q&A function, that you can reach out to Amanda Roman at Harbor House, A Roman at harborhousefl.com, A Roman at harborhousefl.com, because we have somebody who is attending our forum tonight saying that as a survivor of domestic abuse, how can I volunteer, perhaps even as a speaker? So I'm sure both Harbor House and the Victim Service Center will look forward to hearing from you. Another question we received is, are there any shelters for people who are a victim of human trafficking? Michelle also shared that there are 2 sites you can go to, and she typed that into the Q&A section if you want to take a look at that, but they are unitedabolitionist.com and the lifeboatproject.org. So those are our questions that we received up to this point. So we're going to move on to the next part of our presentation. So thank you, Emily Mitchell with the Victim Service Center, for her great presentation. And so up next, we have finally, and we're honored to have our self-defense class back again from Orlando Police Department. So we have with the Orlando Police Department, Officer James West and Officer D. Carlos Hill, who are going to take us through a self-defense class. Gentlemen.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having us. Unfortunately, Officer Patterson could not attend this evening, so I'm filling in for him, but Officer De Carlos Hill is here. And then we also have Officer Danny Torres, who you'll get an opportunity to see them both after the presentation portion of the safety and awareness training that we're about to do. So thank you for having us. Tonight, we're going to just cover some basics with you all regarding personal safety, situational awareness, and then we've got a few beginner self-defense techniques that we're going to illustrate shortly. So as I mentioned, I'm Officer James West with the Orlando Police Department. I work in the crime prevention unit for OPD, and we conduct training. We also do community relations outreach to 6 different districts in the city of Orlando. Tonight, some of the objectives for what we're going to discuss regarding personal safety is we just want to go through some of the basic principles regarding personal safety, situational awareness. We're going to review a couple of common types of violent encounters, and then we're going to have just kind of an introduction to basic self-defense techniques that you all get an opportunity to see. Just a few disclaimers. This presentation is not a comprehensive physical training program. It's not intended to be that. The one that we're doing here tonight, it's a little bit more condensed. And it just contains basic concepts and techniques regarding personal safety tips and self-defense. There is no guarantee that any of the self-defense techniques outlined in this program will be effective in every situation 100% of the time. And we also encourage those who are interested in learning about self-defense to seek out other course programs in your area. So when we talk about personal safety, one of the most important aspects of personal safety is situational awareness. The majority of incidents of violence, whether it's random or by a known person, a lot of these encounters that we have where danger can be, where we can be presented with danger, a lot of them are avoidable without physical self-defense, just basically with situational awareness and being able to identify potential threats and issues before they or before we're confronted with them. So the definition of situational awareness here is a person's ability to scan the environment, looking for challenges and opportunities while maintaining that ability to conduct normal activities. So in simpler terms, it's just paying attention to what's going on around you and recognizing the threat is the most important component of situational awareness. And in law enforcement, we use the term tactical mindset. And the tactical mindset is just your approach to everything that you do. So a good example of that would be, we've all had family members, or we've seen illustrations of, where you have people who refuse to sit with their back to the door when they go to the restaurant. Or if you're in a movie theater, you want to sit close to the exit. You know, it's those sorts of things. If you're in traffic, as we all can experience here in Orlando, in bumper to bumper traffic on I-4, not being so close to the car in front of you, leaving, you know, 4, 5, 6 feet, a half of car length space. So then in the event that there's an emergency and you need to move, you're not pinned in between two cars. So it's having that mindset, thinking a step or two ahead of a potential you know, dangerous situation or an emergency is kind of the gist of what situational awareness is, and just being able to recognize those threats. And we talked about having a tactical mindset, and that's kind of, you know, training yourself, training your mind to think, you know, for situationally and for situations that may be dangerous for you or the people that you're with. So we'll start with being aware of one's surroundings. That's one of the most important things. It's often that you know, as a police officer, you know, I respond to calls where someone may have been a victim of a crime, and a lot of times they just said they didn't see it coming. And it's easy for us to be distracted. We have devices, cell phones, you know, there's a lot of things that are going on around us that can take our attention away. And it takes a purposeful mindset to be aware of your surroundings, to put away those distractions when you're leaving a store or when you're walking to your car, to scan and actually look at people that are around you in your setting, make eye contact, you know, people watch, for lack of a better expression. And you'll be surprised at what you can see and identify just by looking at your setting and the surroundings that are around you. We have another term or expression that we use in law enforcement. We say that the body cannot go where the mind hasn't been. So in order for you to be prepared in a situation that may be dangerous, you're less likely to react appropriately if you haven't thought about it, that situation, if you haven't prepared a response to a situation, or if you haven't thought about what you're going to do if encountered with a certain situation. You're more likely to freeze as you go through, you know, the process of, you know, of processing in the threat or what's happening to you, and then giving your mind enough time for your body to determine what the outcome is going to be. What are you going to do to escape that situation? Am I going to defend myself? Am I going to run? Am I going to hide? Or in most cases, if you haven't really thought about those things, you're going to freeze in that situation. And those are common things that we experience as people. So thinking about different situations and how you're going to respond or what you're going to do is the first step to doing that mentally. And then there's the physical preparation that follows up with that. So, and then at the last point, there's play the what if game. Think about what you would do under these circumstances. Going back to the restaurant scenario, if I'm sitting in the restaurant and this person comes in, where are my exits? Bad guy or gal comes in, where are my exits? How am I going to respond in this situation? You know, what am I going to do? And you're more likely to respond appropriately when you think about those things in advance. Then there's a physical component to it. We've got the mental preparation, taking the mental reps, whether that be thinking about alternate routes to get home. If you're, you know, if there were a traffic crash or something and you were forced to take an alternative route to get home, how many different ways could you take to get home? How familiar with you are you with your environment, or would you be totally dependent on GPS or something to that effect? So there's the mental preparation, and there's physical preparation, which will be regular exercise, and that, you know, which improves your confidence and stamina, and it helps you when it comes to, you know, physical defense, as far as being to execute the things that you train by being, you know, having the stamina and the confidence through physical preparation. The most important part of any training, whether it's mental or physical, is repetition. You just have to do it regularly enough that it becomes, you know, second thought. for you to be able to execute or do what it is that you've trained to do. So there's a few different types of violent encounters. We're going to talk about two tonight: random attacks. Random attacks generally aren't as common from what you'll see when it comes to perpetrators, and it's often due to environment or opportunity. So that's where situational awareness is important, because generally, if you're a victim of a random attack, the perpetrator of that crime saw you as vulnerable, and that may have been because you didn't see them coming. You weren't prepared to react to them. You weren't holding on to your valuables in a secure way. So they look for that opportunity, versus they don't want a struggle with someone who's prepared. They'd rather go for the easy person in that situation who's unprepared. Best ways to avoid the random attacks are just traveling in groups. Numbers are always very good. If you're leaving work at a later hour and the lights are not the best in the parking lot, or you work that third shift, leave and try to travel in groups to go back to your vehicle. You're safer in numbers. And then keep your head up and be aware and confident. Stay off those devices. Just pay attention to what's happening. Occasionally, I'll do the grocery shopping for the family. It doesn't surprise me how often when I'm walking out to the vehicle, sometimes there may be individuals that are soliciting or panhandling, and they'll walk up. And it's not uncommon to see someone completely caught off guard by someone that walks up to their vehicle while they're loading groceries or putting things in the back seat. And you can see that they're shocked or stunned. Whereas if you're walking out to your car and you're observing the parking lot, you should see that individual or those people, whether they're selling Girl Scout cookies or whatever it is. You should be able to identify those individuals or that activity, so that it's not a surprise to you and you're already prepared. You've got your car keys out, you're ready to get in the car or take whatever evasive action, or not go if you feel threatened enough. Next would be a known person attack. These are generally more common, where the perpetrator is someone that's known to the victim. The victim generally can be surprised by the incident, whether it's dating violence or sexual assault by someone that's known, generally because there's a trust factor involved, because you feel that you know the person or you're familiar with that person. So a lot of times we have our guard down in these situations. And then we also find that victims are reluctant to react or call for help because of their relationship with the attacker. And just as with random attacks, self-defense or calling for help, you just have to recognize that those are going to be the actions or the steps that you may need to take in these circumstances. So a couple other pointers before we get to the physical demonstration. When you're entering and leaving a building or a parking lot, I kind of talked about this earlier. Just be aware of your surroundings. Head up, eyes up, devices away, and just kind of have a scan, an idea of the landscape, and kind of scan and assess for individuals or things that may be dangerous. Park close to the building if possible. Try to park under parking lot lights or where there's cameras. We see it a lot that people, if you have a newer vehicle and you don't want anybody to dent or ding it, you may park way out into the, in the parking lot area, which I can understand that. But just be selective. Try to park in front of windows where there's high visibility and where lighting is best. Avoid shortcuts through isolated areas and watch for ambush points. An ambush point is just somewhere where you can't see. So if you're walking out of a door to a business, or if you're exiting, the rear, area to your office building, can you see around the corner? And if you can't see around the corner, if there's not a mirror, or if there's not some, something to help you to visually see what's on the other side, that would be an ambush point. So we generally tell people to kind of stick to areas that you're familiar with, and avoid being isolated if you can. And then have your keys or your car keys or your keys to your home or whatever it is, have that ready in your dominant hand. One of the things that people fail to understand or really realize is that under a stressful situation, we lose our fine motor skills. So it can become difficult to, put a key into the keyhole, to do those things that require those fine motor skills. You lose that. Your hands are shaking. You've got adrenaline going through your system, and you can find it difficult to do the smallest task, that you wouldn't normally have a problem with. So it's just something to keep in mind. You can also use your keys or that instrument in your hand as a weapon if you're prepared and you have it as well. And then if you have a key fob or a panic button, that's another reason to have that in your hand, versus your cell phone or what have you, so that you're just prepared to take action with it. So now we're going to transition to the basic physical defense portion. And we're going to set up our secondary camera to get that started. So just bear with us while we get that going, and we'll transition right into that portion of the class.
Great, thank you, Officer. While you do that and get set up, we did get a question in, and I'm hoping Michelle can help answer this completely. And that question is verbal violence a type of domestic violence? Of course, there is, for injunctions, an injunction for protection, there is a stalking charge, which can be, or a stalking injunction, which is for harassment and that sort of thing and stalking somebody. But this question specifically is verbal violence a type of domestic violence? Michelle, are you still with us?
I'm still with you. And the answer is yes. When we're talking about the first slide that I put up was what is the legal definition, and then what is, the Harbor House or domestic violence provider's definition. And that's when we talk about it being emotional. We talk about it being verbal. We talk about it being then leading to physical. And so if you're in a situation where you have a partner who is telling you, calling you names, belittling you, threatening you with words or intimidation. But yeah, that is all considered domestic violence. And so that's why we broaden, as far as domestic violence providers, we broaden the definition.
Great, thank you. And hopefully our officers, looks like they're getting ready for our presentation, the physical part of their defense class.
Hi guys, again, thanks for having us. So I am Carlos Hill. I'm an officer with the Orlando Police Department. I've been teaching for quite a few years now. I teach the police academy, so I teach police how to fight. I teach people how to defend themselves. And this is my partner tonight, Officer Danny Torres.
Good evening, everybody. I've been here about 5 years and 5 years previously, and he asked me to help out, so I'm here to enjoy the night.
So here's the deal. First, I need everybody to get up. This is the active point. I know this is virtual, but we're going to show you just a couple techniques that you can actually practice and do right now. If you have somebody else in the room, that's great. You can do that as well. But get up, get that blood moving. Let's get moving for the next few moments. We're going to talk about just some basic things. Worst case scenario, you're in a position where you have to respond. I want to give you a couple tools that's going to assist you in that. Generally, if we're just talking fighting, the thing that I take pride in is doing these things, I'm increasing your confidence. As a fighter, generally, the more you learn how to fight, you don't fight. So ultimately, we're going to show you some techniques that you're going to know how to do. But because you know how to do these techniques, you probably won't have to use them, because when a bad guy or a perpetrator, somebody shows up and they think that they have selected a victim, you're going to have such a stance, such a confident presence that they're going to realize they picked the wrong person and move on. That's the ultimate goal. Being aware, doing all those things that you don't look like a victim. But, so we're just going to talk about first stance. We're going to just jump right into it. And again, if you're in your room, stand up, do it along with us. We're going to try to demonstrate everything pretty slowly. We do have not quite a few, but a couple moves that we're going to try to get through. So we're going to move swift. If you need to stop us, stop us. But we're going to talk about stance first. Stance is important because everything comes from the stance. Everything, your balance, your base, your foundation, your strength, everything comes from your stance. So right now, Miss Danny is going to stand about shoulder width apart. So her feet are about as wide as her shoulders. That's why it's shoulder width apart. She's gonna take her dominant foot. If you're left-handed, it's your left. If you're right-handed, it's your right. She's gonna take her dominant foot, slide it back just a little bit. And this is generally a good stance, slight bend in the knee, not squatting down, but just a slight bend in the knee. This is a good stance because she has good balance. I can't necessarily move her. She has good solid foundation. So if I'm just trying to move her, she has a good solid foundation. First thing in defending yourself is when this person woke up, if I'm the bad guy, and we'll say she weighs 75 pounds. I'm the bad guy, and I go to take her. I didn't wake up with an extra 75 pounds. So if she simply drops her center of gravity, I can't take her away because that 75 pounds kicks in. So that's the idea. Great stance. Anytime anything happens, you kind of drop that center of gravity. It makes you heavier. It makes you stronger in your foundation. So right now, take a few moments. Look at that stance. Again, shoulder width. Take that dominant leg, whichever the dominant leg is, and move it back a little bit. Slightly bend your knees. That's a good stance, good foundation. I can't see you right now, but I'm pretty sure you're doing good. I'm pretty sure you're doing it. Next, we're gonna get into a block. So this is, I made a bad decision that I'm gonna attack this person because I think she's vulnerable. What I wanna show you is just a simple way to block. Block. Ultimately, turn the face me. We'll start this way. So you want to protect the pretty face, protect the body, because I'm coming in with the swing to try to knock her out. Remember, we have a good stance because we're somewhat aware, we see it coming, somewhat of a good stance. As I get closer, she's going to drop a little bit, drop that body weight, and she's going to take her hands and cup the back of her head. So this is what it looks like. Ultimately, taking her hands, cupping, my grandmother or mom would call that the egg in the back of the head. Grab that with your hands. That does two things. It protects if I was trying to hit in one of those soft spots. Two, if I came in to attack her, it turns into a strike. She now has elbows up. If she grabs the top of her head, those elbows they're no good. They're no good. So that's why you reach all the way back, grab the back of your head, grab that egg in the back of your head, and it puts those elbows up. So two things are gonna happen. I'm not gonna be able to strike her the way I want to. And then if I run into it, it's a strike. Nice sharp elbows. So again, she's relaxed. So we're looking, she's seeing, she's being aware, she sees me moving around. I decide, you look weak to me, I'm coming in. I come in, it's blocked, she has a strike. So right now we have a good stance, good foundation, and we have a way to block and protect ourselves. If nothing else, we can block and protect. One thing we also need to talk about during this time, if I'm attacking her, what's one thing she can do to assist in getting her out of this? Make noise, scream, yell. Someone needs to know that you're being attacked. Someone needs to know that you need help. Someone needs to know that. So anytime it's uncomfortable or you feel that, or if I'm coming and I'm trying to attack, she needs to be yelling, help, stop, someone call the police, don't hit me, stop, get back. Anything just to make noise and get some attention of people around. Hopefully we won't have some of those bystanders to stand and do nothing. Maybe somebody to jump and kick in or call the police or do something to assist. But right now, again, we have a good foundation. We have a way to block. Now we're gonna talk about how to strike. How do we turn that aggressor or that person attacking us and turn around and we get them off of us? Here's one tool. So I wanna talk about a palm heel strike. We're not gonna get into punching so much because you can cause injury to yourself. You may punch and bend and hurt your wrist. We don't wanna do that. What we're trying to do is, again, eliminate that freeze. In the presentation, we talked about freeze, and then there's a fight and flight factor. We want you to be able to get out of there. That's what we want you to do. We don't want you to stand there and square off and really get into a fight, be a ninja or anything like that. We want you to be able to get wind to see another day, to get out of there, to run, to take flight. And we want to eliminate that freeze. These tools assist in eliminating that freeze. Naturally, we may pause for a second because we don't, oh, is this really happening? But we want you to get into it so you can get out of there. Here's a strike. We're going to show you 2 quick strikes. One is a palm heel. Bend those fingers up so that they're out of the way because we don't want to hurt the fingers. Bend them up. We're striking with this. So she's going to show you that. I'm just going to hold the pad. I was nice to her today, so hopefully she doesn't hit me too hard. But you're going to strike. And as she's striking, she's yelling. She's making noise.
Get back! Stop! Police! Get away!
Okay. Of course, she's in that routine of being a police. But that's it. Make noise. Strike. Get out of there. So here's how we're going to use this. So it's a situation where you're attacked, you're in your stance. Ultimately, I want you to be able to deliver that strike. Unfortunately, they've made a bad decision and we have to get violent. We're making it past this moment. So it has to be violent. She's gonna hit me hard, make noise. I want her to get out of here. I want her to stun me and then get out of here. Ultimately, if the person is not super tall, we would like to target those soft tissues. I don't know if you've ever been hit in the nose by a toddler. It doesn't matter who does it, but your eyes water, it hurts. So you're gonna give that strike everything you have. So you're putting that palm, that heel in their face, through their face. And then you're getting out of there screaming, yelling, because you were just attacked. So I'm not gonna get hit in the face, but I'm gonna hold this to the side as if I was about this height, and she's gonna demonstrate what it will look like so we know how to do the strike. How do we put it into play? Okay, I'm in the park walking, this guy comes up, hey, give me your purse.
Get back! Police!
Let's do it again. So she's in the grocery store, and I come in and I see, hey, give me your purse.
Get back! Police!
And that's one strike. So we're gonna get into, again, you have a foundation. You know to drop that body weight. I'm not gonna pick up a chair. That 75 kicks in. She has a block. Grab the back of that head. The peanut in the back of the head, what my mom would say. That brings those elbows up. That could be a strike. That hurts. It hurts. She also has a palm heel strike that she can use to now attack to be able to get out of here. One more strike that we have, it comes from the block. So if I come in, boom, and she blocks. Remember this block. She's already in position for what we're about to do. I missed, or she stepped in and she's bringing the fight to me. We now have a hammer fist. So you're making a fist. You're not striking, but you're taking that fist and you're smashing down like a hammer. So it's called a hammer fist. So someone attack, you successfully block, and then you deliver the strike so you can get out of there. So what the hammer fist looks like, she'll just deliver a couple, and then we're going to show you, like we did with the last one, kind of in motion. So, hammer strike.
Get back! Get back!
Again.
Get back! Get back!
So again, I come in with a strike, she blocks, she delivers, because I want her to be able to get out of there. So in real live action, unfortunately, we were attacked. This is what it's gonna look like. Hey, lady, come here.
Get back! Get back! Help! Police!
Nice. One more time. So again, you're in the playground, you're in the park, you're at a store, and somebody says, oh, she looks like a victim. Give me your purse.
Get back! Police! Get back!
Again, what we're doing is we're eliminating that freeze. We're having the confidence to know that we can actually defend ourselves, because you can. What we're doing right now is, again, giving you tools, but these are all things that you're already capable of.
So DeCarlos, we have a couple questions, and I'll go ahead and read while I'm also holding the camera, playing cameraman. It says, what if they grab you from behind?
So we have many different techniques. Now, due to restraints with time that we have, we can't get into all of them. So we're starting with some basics, but I will answer that and we'll demonstrate. So there's a couple things where, let's say I do sneak up on her. First thing, is, remember, dropping that body weight. Watch what that does to me. And that's not even just a technique. It's just basic strategy. So I come in and I grab her and she drops her body weight. That throws me off balance immediately. But so if you're grabbed, relax for a second. If you're grabbed from behind, there's a couple things to do. So I'm grabbed from behind. I'm gonna drop my body weight. That's gonna throw them off. There's a couple things in the sense of you can throw a head back. You can either use a butt, bottom, or worst case, this is one thing that we hate. So let's say I grab her, she drops down, I have her arms trapped, she shifts her body left or right, and that hammer fist that we have strikes back. So she's not going to do it for real, but we will demonstrate. So I grab her, she drops that body weight, shifts, and strike. Ultimately, of course, we can't go over all the techniques right now, but worst case scenario, always remember eyes, throat, groin. If you can't do anything else, strike. Eyes, throat, or groin, so you can get away. But again, so if I grab from behind, she can choose using her head, maybe headbutt back. She can bump back, and take up, or she can shift left or right and deliver a strike. Hopefully that answers that question for you. And just to wrap it up, I want to give you one more. This is the last one. It's a bonus. So again, we've talked about the foundation, the stance. We've talked about a block, talked how it can be a strike. We've talked about that palm heel, delivering it and getting out of there. We've talked about a block into hammer fist and get out of there. Now we're going to talk about one, because generally we do have a lot of attacks that are personal, that people, they know us, we're in a relationship, we're close or something. And a lot of people like to choke. One way that we can get away from that, and again, this isn't something that we want to try to muscle and get into a battle with someone. We just want to get out of it and get out of it. For this example, I am choking her. For safety measures, I'm not going to use thumbs. I'm just going to grab her on the neck like this. For this example, I am going to grab her around the neck as if I'm choking. She is going to respond by simply dropping that bottom, dropping that center of gravity, dropping that weight, dropping. I want you to shoot an arm straight up. Don't swing it up. Shoot the arm straight up, and then you're just going to turn and get out of it. This is how it's going to look. So I come in, I say, you know what, bump it. And I grab her around the neck, straight up, and she turns and walks away. If you have someone with you, try it. Take it real easy, because it's a very simple technique, but it's very, very effective. I know her, she know I won't really try to hurt her, so I'm gonna put my thumbs in it, but it'll hurt me. Shooting that arm straight up traps my hand in there. When she turns away, it overextends my wrist. I can't hold on. It's versatile now, but when we get into the future and we can get into, I generally go around and let you do it to me. And I want you to grab, because it's such an effective tool. Grab, drop body weight, shoot arm straight up, turn out of there. I'm gonna hold as much as I can. It's real effective. So again, just drop, shoot straight up, turn away, and get out of there. Yell, scream. So these are the moves that we can, it's about 4 or 5 move techniques. Master these, practice these. When you get to a point where these are good, they're easy, they're in your toolbox, you're confident, it's up, great. Use them if necessary. If you want to continue learning, find a local gym, look out for any classes that we offer, and it'll help you out.
And answer a couple of the questions, and I'll answer from behind camera. There was a question, do we teach classes at OPD? No, we don't teach regular classes for the public. We just offer the introductory classes similar to what you've seen here tonight. We offer a few of them a year virtually. We're working on our program for next year. It's going to change slightly, so stay tuned for that. But we'll offer them across the city in each district. in person when we're able to do them in person, and we've done them virtually depending on COVID, if that answers your question. But we recommend that you go and you find a local gym. There's different disciplines. There's the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, kickboxing, karate. There's a lot of different things that you can learn some of these techniques from in a local gym setting. And then there's another question, what if you don't have a group to walk with? I've also heard that you shouldn't put your house keys with your car keys so people can't get your car or get into your house. Is this true? I would say, as far as separating your keys, that's probably not, it doesn't hurt to do that. But what we see more often is people who leave their garage door openers in their car, and they have them parked outside, and then someone will burglarize the car to get into their house using the garage door opener. As far as having keys, if they're in your possession, whether it's your house keys or your car keys, I don't think that that makes a difference one way or the other, at least in a significant way. And on that note, were there any more questions for Officer DeCarlos?
Does not appear we have any other questions at the moment. So,
okay, great.
Great job with the presentation and great tools for the toolbox, as you said. So thank you for that. And if we don't have any other questions, we're basically coming close to the end of our forum, but don't go away, because if you're with us right now, we really want you to take a survey at the end of this and give us some feedback. It won't take long for you to do it. So I want to thank everybody who's participated here tonight. The Orange County Clerk of Courts and Tiffany Moore Russell, your Orange County Clerk of Courts, is thrilled to be able to bring us all together to talk about domestic violence during a Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We hope you enjoyed these topics discussed in the workshop tonight. Big thank you to everybody, Orlando Police Department for your presentation, also Harbor House, the Victim Service Center, and our own Jose Vallon, who shared information from the clerk's office on injunctions. Now, once this forum is completed tonight, it's going to be available online. And once it's posted, you'll be able to view the video through our social media channels. Thank you all for joining us, and please don't forget to take our survey at the end of this webinar. Thank you and have a great night.